So today we're going to look at the camera gear we've been using. I'm going to give you some pros and cons to this particular gear. And I'm going to tell you why I'm ditching Canon equipment and going a completely different direction. So multiple times I've been asked from viewers, hey, can you give us a review of the camera gear you're using? Give us recommendations or pros and cons. And I've been pretty hesitant to do that just because I don't consider myself a camera expert by any stretch of the imagination. I don't feel like I should be giving you guys any advice on what kind of camera gear to buy. But I am going to jump into this today and show you what we've been using and my personal pros and cons with this gear, and why I'm making a drastic shift a different direction. Let's jump into that just real quick. We're kind of changing the direction of how we're going to produce videos. We're still going to do the same kind of stuff, and we'll still do some vlog style videos here and there. So that part won't change. It's still going to be a complete mix of what you're going to get on any particular day. But some of the videos I want to produce more of a cinematic product. So it's time to change some of our gear to make that work better for the style we're kind of going for. So that's the reason you're going to see some changes to the channel here. So let's jump into the gear that we currently have. I want to go through this real quick and explain why I chose this stuff to begin with, and the stuff that I've seen that I don't particularly like, things that I do like about it. So let's dive into that real quick. Again, I'm not a camera expert, and so take it with a grain of salt. But a lot of this gear is going away. You probably see it on eBay or something here in the near future. So let's dive into it. Before we jump into the main cameras, I just want to go through some of these kind of secondary cameras I use making videos. Obviously, I use a cell phone once in a while. This is a Samsung S20 Plus, and this is actually my third one of these. Good little phone, pretty rugged with that case on it. The one thing I will complain about all these newer Samsung phones, these rounded edges are extremely fragile. So before these rounded edged phones, I'd keep a cell phone for a long time and never break a screen. I was always the guy that still had a phone that was, years old, still had the original screen. But these rounded edge phones, I don't know what it is about them. I broke, 5 screens now with these things. Let's talk about these action cameras really quick. I've got the Hero 8 and the Hero 10. I just bought this winter. Both these are pretty good little cameras. They got excellent image stabilization, but for a small camera, this little Sony Handycam, hands down, will beat the image quality of either of these two cameras any day of the week. This does not stabilize images really great. It's got some image stabilization. These do a better job of image stabilization, but overall, I prefer this camera for some B-roll stuff. Just take a look at this shot that I took this last summer when I was up filming the Queen of the West. And this little camera, it just always surprises me. Every time I take it out and use it, sometimes I forget to take it. But on a trip like this, I decided to throw it in the pack, and I'm glad I did. This thing just produces really, really good images. Unfortunately, you can't find these anymore. They quit manufacturing them. And when you do find one, they're just an outrageous price. But this little unit, I think it was FDX 3000 or something like that. Great little camera. I wish I had 2 more of those instead of these. These are great for motorcycles and side-by-sides and stuff like that, just because the image stabilization is so good. One thing I really gripe about these, though, is low light conditions. Both of them are horrible. I don't like them for low light conditions. I mean, they do their job, but they do not like dark environments. Let's talk about the drone real quick. This is a Mavic Air, a DJI Mavic Air. Lots of things I like about this drone. I like the size of it. The images that come off of this are surprisingly really good. For the camera size that's on this thing does a really good job. There's several drawbacks to this drone though. The first is the battery life. You might, about 16 minutes on a good day is about all the flight time you have with this drone. It doesn't have a real big battery pack, and it just isn't real good with battery life. The other thing it's not great at is crosswind environments. You won't get real great images out of this drone if you've got much for wind. So if you're going to fly this, especially up in mountainous terrain, I've noticed that wind over the top of the ridge lines, this really plays havoc with this little drone. But if you can live with that, it does produce great images. Now this, I think the second version of this, the 2S, is probably a lot better version. So let's talk about the controller here real quick. This is probably the other major complaint I've got about this little drone is the holder for your cell phone. The S20 Plus just barely fits in this holder. In fact, I have to take the case off and just kind of wiggle it in there to get it to fit correctly. So that's a bummer. So I put an adapter on here so I could use a tablet or something. So I've got a little bit more space there to work with so I can actually see what I'm doing. This has been a great improvement. The other thing about this whole package is the range is very limited on this drone. My old Phantom 3, even though it was a big drone, hard to carry around in backpacks and such, it had really pretty good range on it. This, you might get a mile away from your controller before you start having some problems. So that's, those are some drawbacks to this drone. Now I'm going to replace, well, I shouldn't say replace. I'm going to keep this drone for backpack use, but I am buying a Mavic 3. The main reason is the flight time. It's got a better camera and it's got around a 40-minute flight time, which is considerably better than this. So the Mavic 3 is coming soon. Now let's talk about the main cameras I've been using, these Canon cameras. First, let's give a little history. The first few videos, probably up to 10, 20 videos I made on the channel, were filmed with a Canon HF400, and then a little later at Canon HF800. Those are dedicated little camcorders. Not super versatile, you can't change lenses on them or anything, but they're really rugged little devices. I handed them down when I bought these cameras. I handed those down to my twins. They use them to film their animals and life around the farm. And those dang little cameras, even though they drop them in the dirt and leave them out when they shouldn't, those cameras are still working. It's really been surprising how rugged those little cameras are. So from the get-go, I've been kind of a Canon fanboy, and that's the reason I bought this. First of all, after the dedicated camcorders, I bought this little Canon SL2. This is a SLR camera. Good little camera. It came with 3 kit lenses. I think I got it from Costco. It's been a good little camera. I have absolutely no issues with this camera. The battery life's not the greatest, but it does do a pretty decent job. I really enjoyed this little camera. With some drawbacks I'll talk about in a minute. Then, not long after I purchased this, they came out with the Canon M50. And I've seen so many people review this and said this is the best thing since sliced bread. So I went ahead and purchased it. My luck with this camera hasn't been great. It does do a great job. Video-wise, it takes pretty good video. It's supposedly a 4K camera. I wouldn't put a lot of stock in that. It does do 4K, but it crops it really bad. And it's just, the video quality isn't very good. So I haven't been very happy with the 4K video out of this camera. In fact, I've only shot maybe 2 videos with it, and I don't even know if I used the footage from it. I just didn't like it. And it's kind of glitchy in the 4K, and it's got the latest firmware in it. It takes great photos, and it takes great 1080p video. Here's my major complaints with this camera. One is it's really picky about which video card you use with it. The only ones I've found that are pretty reliable with this camera are the SanDisk Extreme Pro. They don't seem to give me any problem. Anything less than that, this Canon will start giving you, I think it's a System 70 error as it's recording. And what's a bummer is you can be quite a ways into making a video and it will do that and you'll lose that whole video. That was my major complaint with this camera. In fact, last few videos, I think I've shot more with this camera than this one, just because I've been afraid of that System 70 error. It really hasn't done it much since switching to those Extreme Pro, but it's still, I've been out and shot some video. You know, I spent 20 minutes walking around looking at mines with the thing rolling the whole time. And I looked down and System 70 error, and I've lost all of that footage that I just shot. So, but like I said, this thing takes excellent photos. It's been a pretty good camera other than those issues. The other issue I have with this is the battery life is not good on this camera. And that would be okay if the battery indicator was accurate. This camera, it'll go from saying it's got a full battery, it'll drop down to like half a battery or half battery indicator. And once it reaches that point, you can plan on you've got minutes, just a couple minutes left of your battery. It'll go from that half indicator down to nothing and it'll shut off. So the battery indicator is a joke on this camera. Besides that, it's a pretty good little camera, but you got to remember to watch that battery indicator. If it goes down at all, change the battery in it. So those have been the two main cameras for the last, I don't know, 2 years or so, however long we've been on YouTube. Most of the videos were shot with these two cameras. Now let's get to the real reason I'm ditching Canon products, even though I like them. Oh, I forgot about this little camera. This is a Canon PowerShot 9, G9X, I guess, Mark II. Good little camera. I don't use this very often. Sometimes I threw it in the backpack when I wasn't sure whether I was going to be taking much video or not. I would do this, but actually the cell phone's easier than this. This camera has hardly been used. The one thing that's a big drawback to this is it doesn't have a flip out screen. So if you're standing in front of the camera, there's no way to tell what you're actually shooting. So that's the reason I don't use this camera very often. But the actual photo quality and video quality is not all that bad out of this. At 1080p on the video, and I don't remember what the megapixel count on this camera is, but you know, it's a decent little camera. I don't even think they make it anymore, but that's one I have shot a few videos on. There's been a couple mine videos. This is all I had with me that day, so that's what I used. But in today's world where the S20 Plus takes just as good or better video than this, probably better, that's what I use. So let's talk about these Canon cameras and why I'm giving up on them. Obviously, I don't like the battery life on this camera, and you know, the card thing kind of solved itself with some better quality cards. But here's the real reason. It comes down to two things. The 30-minute record time. Both these cameras will shut off after 30 minutes of record. There's times I'm working in the shop and I want to take a video of what I'm doing. I want to just turn the camera on and walk away from it. And both these cameras, inevitably I'll forget to go reset at 30-minute mark. These cameras will shut off and I'll be out in the shop for 2 hours working on a project, thinking I'm videoing it, and then it dawns on me I haven't went and checked the camera, and both of them have shut off after 30 minutes. Or I'm out doing some prospecting, same thing. I'll set this camera up and walk away from it, and it doesn't take long to eat up 30 minutes out there digging holes in the ground. And this camera or this camera, they'll both shut off, and I missed the important footage. So that's one of the big reasons I've not been happy with these cameras, is that 30-minute record time. And probably the most important reason is the image stabilization. Neither one of these cameras have in-body stabilization. A couple of these lenses supposedly have image stabilization, but it's pretty much a joke. It doesn't work very well. In fact, look at this footage. I shot this last summer when I was on the way into the Queen of the West. I think I shot it, no, it was with this camera. With the optically stabilized lens on it, I brought this back and I was hoping to make 2 or 3 videos off of that trip in there. But this footage wound up so bad, and I was trying my best to hold this camera as steady as possible. It just did not turn out well. I gave up trying to image stabilize it after in post in the video editing software. It can do a decent job, but you wind up with a lot of artifacts when you do it. And I just didn't like the footage from that trip. And that's what kind of prompted me. I'm like, okay, it's time to look for something different, something that doesn't have a 30-minute limit on it, has got some embodied stabilization, and on top of it, it might have lens stabilization that would wind up working better. So that's one of the main reasons I'm ditching Canon. I like you guys, but it's time to move on to something different. And by the way, sometimes I use that for audio recording from out in the woods or something. Major problem with this is it's a shotgun mic, so if I point it that way, it picks up sounds out in front of the camera. So if I'm standing in front of the camera, that works great. But then when I get behind the camera and I forget to move this and turn it around, yeah, the audio is just terrible. So, and I know they make a double-ended version of this. I just never went about getting one. But most of the time when I'm out and about, I use the Rode Link system. Now, I've got a new mic system coming from the DJI system. I ordered it. They haven't shipped them yet, but I did order one that will go on the new camera system. So what is the new camera system? What am I going to? So here's our new main camera. This is a Sony a7C. Currently it has a 24 to 70 millimeter f4 lens on it. Also have a couple other lenses I purchased. Got a wide angle f1.8, and I don't remember what the other one is. Now, mind you, most of these lenses, like this one, if you bought this brand new, would probably cost more than both of those cameras. So that's these are big upgrades. And I've looked at Sony in the past, and one of the reasons I really kind of balked at them is they did not have a flip out screen. Well, now they've got flip out screens. Before it had this screen that come up behind. Well, you can tell if a screen come up behind, it's going to be right in the way of the way I normally set my gear up. But this camera obviously is a much better setup. This is a full frame sensor on this camera. Those obviously are not. So this is going to be much better in low light conditions. It's just an overall better camera. I was a little hesitant to go this route because Sony doesn't have a great touchscreen setup. So the touchscreen on this is very limited. About the only thing you can use it for is autofocus. But a lot of people gripe about the menu system on this. I've adapted to it really fairly quickly. I've only had this camera about a week, and I really have no problem with the menu system. It is a little more cumbersome, being that it's not a touchscreen, but it's really, once you get used to it, it's not that bad. If they had to do an upgrade to this camera, though, I would say a touchscreen would be in order. You talk about a goofy menu system. Now, this little Sony has a goofy menu system. This thing, every time I sit down and mess with it, I have to kind of relearn everything again. But the menu system on this is pretty intuitive, really. There's a lot of sub-menus in it, but overall, it's a pretty good deal. Now, obviously, it didn't come with this. This is a small rig protective case with an integrated mount on the bottom. Also, I bought a little handle for it. I really like that setup. It protects the camera and gives you a nice handle to get a hold of. And normally if I'm carrying it around, that would move up to there. But right now it's on a tripod. And by the way, we went ahead and bought a fluid head tripod, fluid motion, which will make for much steadier shots, unlike the phone I'm holding in my hand currently. So there you have it. That's the camera gear that we currently have. I just bought this Sony and these lenses. It's a tough pill to swallow to make that investment. But if that's the type of video we want to make, that's kind of the direction we've got to head. And with that, once we start talking about the 4K video, I've got to now upgrade the computer system. And it's kind of funny. This new Canon, or this new Sony camera, can't stop saying Canon. I'm just infatuated with them, I guess. But this new Sony, I took some pictures with it and went to edit them in Photoshop. And lo and behold, the version of Photoshop I have will not work with the latest version of the raw images from Sony. So guess what? I had to go buy new software just to even look at the images. So that was kind of an eye-opener. And then with that, we start talking about the 4K video. And if you're not familiar with it, it takes a lot of processor power to edit and render 4K video. let alone 8K or anything above. So if you remember if you've been with the channel any length of time, a couple of years ago, I built a computer just to edit the 1080p videos better. It's kind of a budget computer. Well, now we're to the point that it works, but it's really slow with the 4K video. And that's where we want to be, is mainly 4K video from here on out. So now I'm having to upgrade the computer now. So I'm making a list of all the parts to build another one. I was going to buy an off-the-shelf one. And from everything I've learned here the last few months, that you can probably buy better parts and do it a little bit cheaper yourself and come out with a better product. So that's probably what we're going to do. I've spent quite a bit of time learning about camera gear, way more than I thought I would ever know about camera gear, mainly because these better cameras, you're going to have to know quite a bit more than the point and shoot kind of style I've been doing. So that's been a great learning experience, and I've been really enjoying it. I'm the type of guy that likes to learn all the time. It's one of the reasons, like, I went and got my private pilot's license. Not necessarily that I needed it, I just wanted to learn it, and so I did it. It's been that way all my life. If I get to a point I'm not learning, I've got to switch gears and learn something. So this camera gear has been a big learning curve. And I've learned a lot. I'm still nowhere close to an expert, but I've learned quite a bit more about it. And I've learned that good camera gear can it can't make or break your production, but it can at the same time. It really helps to have decent gears. And like this camera I'm shooting on here, for the first few videos, you may not see the best quality because I'm still learning how to utilize it to its capabilities. Forgive me. My lower lip is numb. It's been numb for weeks. I had an implant done and it kind of pinched a nerve down there. So it's slowly getting feeling back, but sometimes it's a little hard to talk when you cannot feel your lower lip. So if you see me doing weird things, that's why, because I have no feeling down in this area and it's very strange. Anyway. So that's where we're at. I hope you enjoyed the view of this camera gear. We got a lot more gear to buy. And I think we're probably going to buy a smaller Sony. I think it's a ZV-1, if I remember right. Kind of a pocket style camera that we can throw in the backpack. You know, obviously I don't want to lug this thing everywhere. I don't want to take it down into wet mines or anything. So we're probably going to buy that little ZV-1 to do that kind of stuff. So it still does 4K video, and it's a really good little camera from what everybody tells me. So that's probably what we're going to buy for our beat around camera. I can't believe I'm saying that about an $800 camera, but that's going to be the cheap camera. So anyway, that's where we're at. I wish I could say YouTube was paying all the bills to do this. It really doesn't. So if you want to support the channel, and I'm not trying to get you to help, send us money, but if you want to support via Patreon, here's how to do it. Follow the link in the description below. That would help us, with some offset a little bit of this camera gear. I feel like I'm begging with this Patreon thing, so it's a little, it's just not my style usually. But if you want to support the channel, that's a good way to do it. Thanks for watching, and I guess we'll see you guys on the next video.